No intro today because I'm getting myself into some spicy business. It feels a bit odd to make my last video of 2024 something that isn't necessarily positive about one of my most beloved gaming franchises out there, but it would be a lie to tell you that I'm happy with everything that Wilds is doing. Now I know that a lot of people look at videos like this and they think that I'm just a hater who's just here to rant, and that's totally not true. Monster Hunter has been one of my favorite games out there even before I started making content, but it also enabled me to make content, so this hobby that I have has been basically made only possible because of Monster Hunter. I'm not expecting you to agree with me, but I am expecting you to be respectful if you do disagree with me, because if you're just calling me a bastard for the simple reason that I prefer something else in a video game, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna tolerate it. I'm not your daddy and I'm not your mommy. I'm only here to cause reflection upon the Monster Hunter community with the little bit of influence that I do have on this platform. With all of that out of the way, let's start talking about the things that Monster Hunter Wilds is doing that I don't necessarily like. And I'm kicking this off with the topic that I'm possibly most passionate about in this whole video, which is tracking. In Wilds, tracking has been essentially removed. Your Sacred just knows where the monster is and you can just press a button and it will run to the monster automatically, which is actually a pretty good feature. It saves you from having to hold down buttons for long periods of time in the open map. But this game is called Monster Hunter, and part of hunting is tracking your targets. No, I'm not saying something like the paintball system should come back. Let's be honest, paintball sucked just as much as flexing after healing. It just made no sense. A game that actually did this really well was Monster Hunter World, because the tracking system with the scout flies there made it so that you had to track the monster at least a few times before you could already tell where it was in the map automatically. I just think it adds a really nice extra layer of immersion, and Wild seems like is really going for it because even the mining animations are just so detailed. And like I said, it's not necessarily like the system hasn't already been made, because the one in World was perfect. I mean, if you wanted to grind that monster, you would be rewarded for gathering tracks to the point where you would never have to track that monster again. And even back in Rise, I really missed it because, the Kahoot just told you wherever the monsters were at all times, and that just, felt a little bit meh. It just felt rewarding to track the monster for a while when I was in a grinding session, and then eventually I just get to a point where I know where the monster is right from the get-go. And I totally get it, it's being removed for convenience because Wilds has much bigger maps, so tracking might be a bit harder there, but even so, I just wanted tracking. I feel like it removes a certain level of immersion that previously was kind of annoying with the paintballs, but with the scout flies, it actually made it pretty rewarding, so I miss it. The second topic is probably like the hottest take, because this is what kind of splits the community into 50-50, which is friendly fire. To me, friendly fire is just fine. In fact, one of my fondest memories was when I started playing Monster Hunter World. A friend of mine would play Greatsword and he would just launch me into the air where I would be able to do aerial attacks so that we could get a mount. But even removing launching and keeping the flinching, I think it's still something valuable, because it teaches people how to work as a team. And that's what the multiplayer aspect should be. It shouldn't be like maximum efficiency, everyone playing their own style. It should be everyone coming together to hunt the monster as a team. The closest comparison that I have is within shooters, more specifically a shooter like PUBG. And this third-person tactical shooter battle royale, whatever the fuck people want to label this game anymore. Seriously though, I reinstalled the game to get a little bit of footage for this part of the video, and what am I looking at? The point being that in this shooter, if you shot your allies, you risked killing them, and if you kill them, then you would be a man down on your squad, which basically spelled death unless you were really good at the game. And that's why I think it's valuable in Monster Hunter, because it teaches people proper positioning, and it teaches another skill level, which is, will your big move, like, I don't know, a gun lance's wyvern fire, hit the monster and your team, or can you make it hit just the monster? Oh, but Ark, I don't like getting flinched. I just don't like it. I think it's annoying, and I just want to play multiplayer for the social aspect, but getting flinched and launched is just pissing me off. If you're the kind of person that sees flinching and launching as a problem, then I'm sorry to tell you this, but I already see 3 different solutions for your problem. The number 1 solution is that if you want to hunt for maximum efficiency, do it alone, or do it with a pre-made team so that everyone can be in sync. I just get confused by people who say that they want maximum efficiency, but they go online and hunt with randoms. Like, do you want to socialize or do you want maximum efficiency? Because those two are gonna clash. Or maybe you don't have to. Who says that everyone needs to dogpile on the monster's head every single time it's down? There are still tails, there are still paws, there are still wings. Go after those. Don't always go for the head. Proper positioning is a huge bit of skill expression in Monster Hunter multiplayer. It shows that you know the monster's weaknesses and you also realize the strength and downfalls of your allies. And before Lance players say you don't understand because I play Lance and you don't play Lance, I swear to God, let me just tell you this right now. I played loads of Lance during Sunbreak and Iceborne, and I didn't have this issue because I positioned well. And in some cases, you will run into some dickheads that are just there to troll and flinch you, and those are not real hunters. Those are just people who are bored out of their mind because they have a boring life. Like, resorting to online trolling for literally no reason it's pretty cringe. And honestly, the Monster Hunter community isn't perfect, so you might run into some of these guys, but at some point, it's just like any kind of other type of confrontation. Just leave the area. Don't go around subjecting yourself to this kind of stuff, bro. And the last solution I see to this problem is the fact that there are jewels out there to prevent friendly fire. You don't even have to go as far as using something like shockproof, which is, I don't know if it's a level 2 or 3 or 4, I just know that it's not a level 1. You can just use a level 1 flinch free and you will not be getting flinched. But come on, Ark, do you really think it's fair that I should be using valuable slots in my build to avoid flinching? Yeah. I think it's perfectly fine. I started using flinch free level 1 when we started doing Elytra and Iceborne because we have to dogpile on the head to break the horns, and well, as a sword and shield player, I was getting flinched out of perfect rush consistently. But a level 1 deco fixed the problem for me, so I don't see what the big deal is about slotting in a level 1 deco. It's a level 1. In my eyes, I think a good solution would be to have lobby leaders decide if friendly fire should be toggled on and off. I think that basically solves it. Some might argue that that splits the Monster Hunter community. I say it puts the eggs in the right basket. Like, yeah, maybe for you, flinching and launching is just the most annoying thing, you don't want to deal with it, and you don't want to use any of the 3 previous solutions that I presented, but to me, flinching and launching is fun. It's an inconvenience that I find necessary to push teamwork and multiplayer, not just this solo play style that everyone seems to be going for. And if you take a look at how they're implementing friendly fire into Wilds, that actually just removed the launching, which is a big middle finger to that side of the fun, and it's also a big middle finger to the people that asked friendly fire to be removed completely. Also, yes, this happened, but Tokuda wasn't flipping the audience off, he was just adjusting his glasses. So the flinching and launcher enjoyers have actually lost half of why they want this in the first place, and the people who hated it got the worst end of the stick. Literally. So yeah, in my ideal world, flinching would be something that maybe would be decided by the lobby leader, but in a more ideal world, people would just either not play online with randoms when they want to be maximally efficient, or they would just be better at positioning, or they would just use the jewels that allow them to not have to deal with it. Next up is random decos. Now, this is something that really didn't please me in World and Iceborne. I don't think that the RNG aspect of decos has ever pleased me, be it in World or Rise or 4U or GU. I'd rather have a system where some rare decos are incredibly difficult to craft, but if you do want them, you're gonna have to work for them, and it is guaranteed that you will receive them. Because I don't like the endgame of Jewels and Iceborne, you know, I don't like having to do a Temper Teostra 50 times and hoping that I'll get 5 level 12 decos. And Sunbreak had a system where you could kind of craft the decos themselves, which I found to be a lot easier because I was personally getting a lot better charms in Sunbreak than I was getting decos in Iceborne. But then the skill bloat in Sunbreak was insane. I mean, you could basically max out 17 different skills, and you also had access to that fucking curio augmentation, which was the worst thing. It drove me nuts. So yeah, random decos for me, I don't really like them. I would much prefer a system where you have to grind for them and make it difficult, you know, make it so that the end game really makes you feel it. Basically, I just hope that the expansion for Wilds that is coming, because we all know we're gonna get one, I hope it has a better end game system than just doing one quest over and over and over in hopes to get a level 12 jewel, or to just spend a fuck ton of time grinding anomalies so that you can shove them into a menu and hopefully get a skill that isn't trash. And the final thing that I want to talk about is the weapon balancing. Now, I don't know why people have this opinion that weapon balancing in PvE games isn't important, because it fucking is. Especially when we live in a world where games with hard endgame bosses are consistently getting asked to nerf these bosses rather than people just adapting. I'm just saying, if I manage to take down Concert Redone pre-nerf, then anybody should, because I am fucking bad at Elden Ring. But when it comes to weapon balancing in Monster Hunter, it's always been a hot topic that people don't necessarily agree on all the time. With the biggest target of criticism being obviously the longsword. We all clown on the weebs that like the longsword. I myself do it all the time, despite making a video where I've already explained my position on the longsword. Now, I know you might not have watched that video, or you might not make plans to watch that video, so let me just explain. I like longsword. I honestly had a lot of fun using longsword into Elytra solo, but ever since Rise and Sunbreak, it just feels like longsword gets so many defensive options that the weapon just starts feeling way too safe. Adding hyper armor at the beginning of Helmbreaker and the range and hyper armor on Spirit Release, which is the follow-up move, it's just overkill. Oh no, but Arik, listen, it adds skill because now you can use it to counter roars and stuff. But dude, you don't need that. You already have Foresight Slash and you already have the Sheath Weep thing. It's not damage that I'm complaining about, it's just that they make the weapon feel too safe, and that draws out some of the fun, because if I have a defensive option for every single move the monster's gonna throw at me, then I'm just kind of bored. I'm not saying that the longsword doesn't require skill. Players like Peppo will make longsword look absolutely incredible, and most people will look at it and go, well, I could pull that off. No, you couldn't. You absolutely couldn't. Peppo is the longsword god, and you couldn't pull off what he does. My main criticism comes from people who say that the weapon doesn't feel too safe, or you require so much skill, when in reality, it just doesn't. It's like Gunlance, right? Gunlance in Wilds is looking so damn good, it might just be an S-tier weapon, but in World, and especially Base Rise, like, holy shit was this weapon suffering. But even with all these good additions in Wilds, you will still have to use your brain, because, like, you don't get hyper armor when you use Wyvern Fire, so you better be pointing that shield the right way. I'm not saying all of this as a longsword hater. I like playing longsword. It's been fun, but sometimes it just feels like the weapon has way too much going on. In fact, it wouldn't even take that much for it to be fixed for me. I think if you decrease the amount of iframes on Foresight Slash so that you can't trigger it even if you used it way too early, remove the hyper armor from Helmbreaker and Spirit Release, because if Sword and Shield doesn't get hyper armor while using Perfect Rush, then Longsword certainly doesn't need it here. And make the weapon punish you if you whiff, like how in Iceborne, if you whiffed an EI slash counter, you'd lose a level of gauge, and that's something that needs to come back in my opinion, if it's already not implemented. I don't actually remember. But finally, the reason as to why I'm a bit triggered when people talk about Longsword, it's mainly because Longsword isn't the weapon that dominates the damage charts, it's the ranged weapons, specifically the bow. Yeah, Longsword might be the more popular weapon because it's so anime, but dude, the ranged weapons have been getting away with war crimes. I'll be completely honest with you, I'm not a bow player. I usually only play heavy bowgun as my ranged weapon if I need it, but I'm kind of happy to see that bow is getting toned down a little bit. I think it's gonna make bow players just that much more impressive for me. Also, I'm sorry Swax Bros, but I think we got a little bit too much going on with the weapon after that last community update, and I don't know if we needed all that. I'm just saying. This is especially weird when you look at how they are changing the insect glaive. I mean, they gave it an offset attack, and they even made it so that the bounce is actually more useful than before, because your damage goes up the more successful bounces you get, and I think it stacks twice. But this is about as many words as I have to criticize Wilds and its peculiar additions slash changes. At the end of the day, I still love Monster Hunter, and I still love provoking this reflection upon the community to see who agrees with me and why, and who doesn't agree with me and also why. And I just want to say that just because I'm a creator and I have a certain amount of followers, it doesn't necessarily mean that I have the right opinion or that my opinion is above anyone else's. It just means that I have a way to share my opinion and see who agrees and who doesn't. And I think this helps the community understand each other a bit better, because we can be respectful even if we disagree. We don't have to start fucking drama in the comments. It's a fucking video game, guys. Relax. And more importantly, I think it helps the devs. The community managers do watch content like this, maybe not specifically my channel, but maybe they do, and this is important so that they can see how the community feels. Not just me as the creator, but you guys. They will read your comments. So, you know, do your best to showcase your opinion. But that's about it. I wanted to leave my remaining bit of criticism for Wilds before it comes out here in 2024, because in 2025 I'm trying to work on some cooler projects, and you guys are already aware of some of what that is. Feel free to like the video and drop some criticism towards the content that I make. Always looking forward to reading what you guys say. It helps me become a better creator. And that's been all from me. Stay safe, and until we meet again.